grief, loss, codependency, delusion, desolation. These are the terrifying flagship monsters that have defined the most successful horror movies of the past couple of years. Now, notice how my list didn't include anything like serial killers, aliens, or even the supernatural. That's because the difference between monsters of tradition and the monsters of today is what we're seeing on screen now cannot be escaped. You can kill the xenomorph. You can escape Freddy Krueger and Freddy Fazbear, for that matter. And the good news is, even if one of these monsters is set loose upon the human race and it kills, I don't know, let's say like 100 people, that gives you a 99.9999988% chance of survival. I like those odds. However, things like loss and loneliness are inevitable, and that's what makes them so terrifying. Horror movies of today, well, the good ones at least, choose to lean into the experiences that are gut-wrenchingly human, rather than spooking you with a scary monster that pops out at predictable moments. These days, it feels like we're in the midst of something of a horror renaissance here, and we've been so blessed with characters that we can identify with and relate to. Although we may not always agree with them, their choices make sense because phenomenal actors bring a sort of depth to these characters that make us feel like we know them personally. That connection to the characters that the brilliant writing and performances bring makes us share their pain. The pain of desolation, stress, abuse, etc. The feelings these movies aim to stir within us are palpable and so irrevocably human. Suffice to say, Obsession is yet another outstanding example of how authenticity is more terrifying than any monster ever could be. With all of this in consideration, I think what I've said here does beg the question. What did my dog think of the movie? So I have a retriever husky shepherd mix named Seffi. At the time of recording this, she is now 7 months old and weighs 60 pounds. I'm in the process of training her for therapy and service dog certification, and at this developmental stage, it's all about exposure, exposure, exposure. I noticed that my local Cinemark does allow service dogs, so I bought a ticket for a 9:40 a.m. showing, politely explained to the staff that we're still in training, and they let us on in. I thought the endeavor would benefit her because watching a movie in the theater, especially a horror movie, would require little Seffi to remain calm, cool, and collected amidst calamity. And overall, she did quite well. I had to give her some time in the foyer to grow accustomed to the new smells, but her transition from door to ticket terror to auditorium was absolutely fantastic. We got in there and took our seats. The only time she really messed up was when I was entranced by Marina Menounos of Nuvi, and then she barked at somebody while I wasn't looking. I guess neither of us really expected anybody else to show up at 9:40 a.m. for a movie like this, but sure enough, there actually were quite a few people who came out to see this movie, which also, kind of speaks to the success of this thing. It's really been popping off. Of course, this was a one-time occurrence. I got her to calm down immediately, and I felt really mortified at first, but the more I thought about it, the more I began to wonder how was this any different from shushing your child? A hot take, but honestly, I think more places should allow dogs instead of kids. My dog only disrupted the peace once, whereas I have had plenty of movie experiences that were completely ruined by children behind me who wouldn't shut up! Yeah, but I digress. I suppose the biggest problem with allowing dogs everywhere is that the vast majority of dogs aren't nearly as regimented and disciplined as my sweet, sweet Seffi, so I doubt the world will change according to my wishes anytime soon. Anyway though, but did she like the movie? Not particularly. I don't really know what her deal was, but she hopped into the seat next to me and slept through most of it. Every time the audio got really loud, like during a jump scare or a super intense sequence, she would wake up for a bit, ask me for a treat, and then go right back to sleep. So then, what did I think of the movie? Wow. Wow, 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 wow. Absolutely outstanding. I mean, man, these past few years have really felt like an all-you-can-eat buffet made out of nothing but 5-star gourmet dishes for horror fans. The good stuff just keeps on coming. Watching Obsession feels like I just got done with the lemon pound cake and then BAM! I noticed there's a whole Texas barbecue room I didn't even know about. So yeah, it was great. I really, really loved it. To start, the 4:3 aspect ratio is a really nice touch that I thought was used very well. I love the way everything is so well-centered. It gives the movie this relentlessly claustrophobic feeling. I honestly wish more directors would make choices like this. Sometimes when I'm watching a widescreen, yeah, I'm using the word widescreen. My birth year starts with a 1. When I'm watching a widescreen movie, so much of the shot is filled with nothing, but here in Obsession, every single element of what's on screen feels so deliberate. I don't really feel like I need to explain the premise here. I'm gonna veer as far away from spoiler territory as possible, and I assume that if you're watching this video, you've seen the trailer and you're familiar with the plot. What I will say though is that for anyone who's been in a relationship with an insane person, this film is absolutely visceral. The experience of waking up every day and never knowing what you're gonna deal with is so nerve-wracking, and this actor's portrayal of that is absolutely perfect. His fruitless attempts to de-escalate her outbursts and mitigate her behavior are so realistic for a guy with a personality like this. People who get into relationships with unstable people are rarely equipped for it, and this dude certainly wasn't. You also get to see how their annoying relationship tears apart the friend group just as fast as the relationship itself progresses. There is so much that a toxic relationship can do to hurt your relationships with everybody who really cares about you, and you can see this by seeing how the group becomes increasingly isolated from each other every time they're shown on screen together. They're a lot closer together in all of the shots where they're standing near each other at the beginning of the movie, because you can see it's a tight-knit group. They're all really good friends, and then the more and more you see them, the farther and farther they're standing away from each other. It's just these small little details really make the movie just so cool. Another thing this movie does quite masterfully is the comic relief. For far too long, cinema has been plagued by Whedonism, which is a fancy word for Marvel humor.
So we're literally hurting guts?
The time during which this was appealing has long since passed. The biggest problem with Marvel humor is that once a joke is filtered through a gaggle of writers and producers, it becomes this generic, overwritten slop that has been painstakingly designed to be funny. In contrast, Obsession's humor, much like its terror, feels authentic. It feels human. One scene I think of specifically is when Bear comes storming back into the crystal shop demanding answers after the full gravity of his choices hits him. The shopkeeper responds with... The shopkeeper hits him with the, "Don't storm in here with that energy, man." It's a hilarious line that feels like it'd be right at home in an episode of Smiling Friends. The moment's not only hilarious, but it's also used to show the audience how indifferent to Bear's plight the outside world really is. It's a brilliant use of extras that shows us how people are reacting to Bear's struggles. We share the sentiment the shopkeeper has because he, like us, understands and recognizes that Bear's suffering is entirely the result of his own horrible choices. But of course, I wouldn't be ranting about this movie today if it were not for its greatest strength: making the audience uncomfortable. Again, there's no tangible monster at the center of this movie's stage unless you qualify Nikki as the monster, but really, I mean, look at her. She's a cutie patootie. The horror does not lie in how threatening she is herself, but rather how her choices impact everyone around her. There's a scene in the movie where Bear takes her, as his new girlfriend, to a party. The way this scene is shot makes you feel as though you are sitting amongst the guests of the party. Nikki's behavior here is nothing short of outlandish and disconcerting. As a spectator, you are left no choice but to sit there and endure. And the camera certainly offers no relief. You have to sit front and center while this girl is inflicting the worst possible vibes upon this otherwise totally enjoyable affair. Every time she opens her mouth, you're just like, oh no, how could it get any worse? And then bam, it gets worse! I have this tendency to laugh really uproariously at things that make me cringe really hard, and I gotta tell you, I haven't laughed this hard at a movie scene since the shower scene in Terrifier 3. You know the one. And as this scene unfolds, you are constricted to sitting with Bear and watching as he, the only person with any sort of authority over Nikki, just sits there, confined to his pathetic, quiet resignation. He, like many other guys in situations similar to his, has learned to disassociate when Nikki comes unglued, leaving everyone else to suffer the consequences of his horrible life choices. Which leads me to my main point. Every horror movie has its monster, but not all monsters are tangible. The true monster of this movie, in my opinion, is Bear's cowardice. His fear of rejection, fear of loss, fear of confrontation, and fear of even standing up for what he wants is the catalyst through which every horrifying event in this story transpires. He is given several opportunities to set things right and take responsibility, but no matter how much he learns, he refuses to grow. It was his fear that made Nikki into what she becomes, and therefore it is his fear that he allows to erode away everything that has made his life worth living until, well, I don't want to spoil anything for you. Go and see the movie. So yeah, in conclusion, I mean, there's plenty of things that this movie does perfectly. I just wanted to, use this video to kind of share my own perspective on things. Really, I mean, the score, the cinematography, the practical effects, and all of that is just, it's so well polished and stylized. But truthfully, despite my many dabblings, I'm not much of an expert on film production. So for Seffi's and my take, I chose to focus on the parts that most deeply affected me personally. So with that, I'm gonna give this movie a 5 stars out of 5, and I bid you adieu.